Let's talk about Ben Jones. He's got a question here. If you had the opportunity to join the WWE in the mid to late 80s, who would you have wanted to work a program with? I would have loved to have seen you and Randy Savage.
Conrad could probably answer this for me, but who would I have liked to work with in the mid 80s in WWF at the time? Yes, Randy Savage is at the very, very top of the list. And I got to have a few matches with him in Tennessee, but on that stage in the mid 80s when, you know, the Macho, just when he took off and had Sherry with him, and just an incredible performer. But also when I kind of look at that roster, Kurt Hennig, when Mr. Perfect, you know, because Kurt was in Tennessee, back and forth between AWA and Tennessee, we became buds. But, you know, when Mr. Perfect, that whole persona came on the scene and they were really strapped the rocket to him. And, you know, Kurt at that point didn't have any of his health problems, his back or hip or any of that. I would have loved to have worked with him. And, you know, that Piper Brett WrestleMania match, Conrad, you helped me out. 87, 86, 87. That was just incredible. And then
Wait, what match you talking about?
didn't Piper and Brett work in Indianapolis?
Oh yeah, that was 92. That's WrestleMania 8.
Jeez. Okay, so I'm way off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'll close with this on this because Conrad, you're going to have to cut me off on this, Jeff. I'll start just rambling here. But no, I would have loved to have worked with Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah, I could see you. And by the way, I could see your character, the Double J persona, where you were this country music singer. I could totally see that fitting into that 80s era of gimmicks too. With, you know, you got Jake the Snake Roberts and you got Coco Beware with the bird and the British Bulldogs with an actual bulldog. And you've got all these big over the top characters. I could totally see if we've got a honky tonk man, we could also have a Jeff Jarrett. And I understand that may have meant you weren't necessarily carrying a guitar because honky tonk was, but I think it could have worked, don't you?
Well, that's a great topic of discussion. And, you know, our old pal Bruce, if he were to come on here, because when you look at, I guess they called it the golden age, but when you look at the 80s wrestling and all those characters you just went through, Vince's vision in the early 90s was, hey, this is the new generation, but the same type of personas. And they got out of bounds with the trash, you know, a trash man and a plumber and a hockey player and all of that. But you kind of look at the vision of it all. It was over the top, larger than life characters. And the new generation, you know, Razor Ramon, a huge part. Diesel, a truck driver, but you didn't, you know, but anyway, so they were we were a, you know, the, no other way to say it. We were truly the next generation of superstars. So yeah, I agree, Conrad. Double J, Jeff Jarrett would have worked in the 80s.
It could have been fun too.
Yeah.
I would love to have seen that. Let's do a question from B here. Is there a space for a third company to serve as an alternative to the alternative? Something a little more centrist or right leaning in terms of their product. So, I mean, listen, I guess we know that there is, because when wrestling was hot during the Attitude Era, there was a WWF, there was a WCW, and there was an ECW. Now, frankly, we know ECW never made a bunch of money, but there is a third now, you know, even here in America. Impact and TNA still hanging around. And certainly you've got the NWA and MLW and some others who are trying to grow. Do you think it's possible that there is a third viable, thriving wrestling company in 2024, Jeff? Or is it just a two-horse race at this point? I'm not saying in terms of who's bigger and all that. I just mean in terms of running a profitable wrestling organization.
Okay. So therein lies, what's your metric? Is it social media count? You know, look, you can get into so many metrics, but if me and you are going to use what I think is the most important for long-term viability, it's the profitability factor. And the short answer is absolutely yes. 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. And I think us, and I'm going to say us as wrestling fans, we tend to overcomplicated, and sometimes I still don't even really understand that term that has really blown up here, I feel, in the last couple of years, the tribalism, if you will, Conrad, and as if it's a four-letter word, maybe. I love and I'll call it spirited debate. Now, sometimes it gets nasty and ugly and
Unnecessary. Yeah.
unnecessary, and I'll get all that, but also I feel for the most part, I really do understand the wrestling industry and my experiences from a young child, and hearing the feedback from all kinds of, being able to look at it through a different lens, and then my life depended on it, literally. How I ate was how many butts you get in seats, or t-shirts you sold, or picture money you may have. So all that. But with all that being said, I do not think that it's that hard to drill down and say, I need to create, or we need to create, a compelling product. Wrestling is already niche. So how do you go down an avenue that is a little bit of a different flavor, and that you're going to appeal to a wrestling fan? And I'm not just saying wrestling fan, that you're going to appeal to the entertainment world and monetize it. It's when you start looking at budgets and all that kind of stuff is where you got to put your business cap on. And that is always, I respect you out of that, Conrad. And I say businessmen outside of wrestling, it's that wrestling, it's that unique form of entertainment, that it looks easier than it is, and that people make emotional decisions. And when you get into making emotional decisions, that's when things head south. And I'm not saying wrestling's analytical, because it's subjective as hell. I mean, it is truly subjective hell, but the results aren't. And if you really look yourself in the eye honestly, and quit voting continuously with your heart when you got to make hard decisions, you're going to be all right. But I do, Conrad, I think there's more than enough room, because YouTube, to me, it's that simple. The end all be all. Once the television, was invented, it was, how do you get TV time? And they went through the 60s and 70s barter deals, and then the beginning of USA and rights, and that built and built and built, and now you're looking at WWE, Netflix, and we're looking at renewals and all that kind of stuff. But that's at the very tip top. If you look at exposing your product, just look at the influencers of today's environment. I'm not talking about wrestling. How many followers does Mr. Beast have?
Oh, so many.
A
I mean,
hundred, a hundred.
more,
I may be wrong.
more than that. More than
Yeah, it's crazy. But
241 million on one channel alone.
okay, 241 million. You don't think he touches? But I'm just trying to use an example. If you create a product and know how to navigate the digital and social media and streaming world, you're going to create an audience if your product's good. It's figuring out what the audience wants. But yes, Conrad, I think there's more than enough room for 2, 3, 4, 5.
Brandon Arthur says, do you think we wind up seeing Cody versus The Rock at SummerSlam? I know that, we don't often talk about what happens on the other channel, but you're a self-admitted wrestling junkie. A lot of people think this goes one of two ways. We're going to see Rock versus Cody at some point down the line, or perhaps The Rock has been a double agent and he's going to turn on Roman and he's going to be on Cody's side. Do you think we ever see a singles match with Cody and The Rock?
Pal, what is our running thread? Creative
It's subjective.
It is subjective. So we can fantasy book all we want. Will we see Rock versus Cody at some point? Again, our running thread, creative is subjective. And you have to factor in, all the obvious. Rock's schedule, injuries.
But he's on the board.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's so many things to factor in, Conrad. But the short answer is Absolutely, you will. I mean, I'm, and who asked that question? And I don't mean any disrespect out of that, but I think the short answer is absolutely.